bit of mist and this geologic kind of approach to this vertical element that would come out of the misting feature, leaving a nice big gap if I don't want to get misted, as Susan says. Apparently she doesn't like to get misted, so.
Your hair gets curly.
Yeah, and then your hair gets curly. It's all craziness. And then you can see kind of in the distance, the mist picks back up with these vertical rock features. So this is that element very evocative of the geology, the basaltic geology. And then these terrace steps down. Again, you can see how kind of the structure of these trees where you have a lot of visibility underneath, but also really fantastic shade, movable furniture, etc. Seeing the bandshell in the distance. And now that's it.
Oh, do you want to just touch a little bit more on the restroom?
Sure. I figured someone was just going to ask, and then I could address it. So our understanding at this point is there are and or will be two different options presented regarding the location of the restrooms. Again, I think we should be careful to not go into it too much, but we'll give you kind of our 2 cents so that then as you see it coming from the development perspective, you'll understand how it relates to the park. So as of right now, there is an option, the kind of what's always been on the table to integrate it into this building, the restrooms, and they would be in the elbow of this building. So again, circulating in here, if the art base is open, circulating through the art base, but basically public restrooms that would kind of come in and you'd find those there. Works great with the park, no problem. Second option is to actually pull those out of the restaurant and now integrate those into their own building. And so this is the location of the bus stop. So the idea would be now to actually integrate those two things. And so you'd have bus stop and restrooms in a building of approximately that size. And, bus stop facing the bus stop and restrooms facing the park. And so that works really well with the park master plan as well. Our sort of team's personal opinion is that we actually like the option of pulling that out into its own building. Timing wise, considerably easier. I think long term, call it maintenance and clarity of where certain walls end and who owns what. Also really good visibility of this as a bus stop and the restrooms, really nice. Could have some storage in it. Can have a little bit of like an integrated dog watering station, just kind of a lot that could be really pulled out and made into that building that you see there. So those would be two different options, and then we don't have a say in it other than that's our kind of personal opinion from a design and I think functional perspective.
So since we only have like 15 minutes left, if anybody has questions before they'd like to kind of give some thoughts. Seemed like there was a question that you had about what something was on the plan. Go ahead, Jen.
I have one. Has the location of WeCycle and bike racks been discussed within this, or is it considered to stay catty corner across where it currently is?
Yeah, that's a good question. So bicycles, we would look at the last discussion that we had was kind of being able to integrate those at multiple entrances. So smaller and more dispersed bike racks, right? Versus one big one, because if it's not in the right place, it's not getting used. So potentially even here, hopefully integrated into Artway, hopefully here, and perhaps another one kind of here, or again, tucked up against the restrooms is a great place. We've not been asked to locate WeCycle.
We did talk a little bit about WeCycle, and I don't remember who was all part of that discussion. And our initial thoughts were to kind of leave WeCycle where it is, which is right across the Youth Center building on the Clark's Market parcel. The ski company accesses that one a lot. And then there's one over by RMI that RMI and the Conservancy can access it. So we were kind of thinking integrating the bikes, as Heather said, kids don't tend to use a bike rack unless it's exactly where they want the bike rack, which we see here in Lions Park. But.
So for now, no WeCycle, but
Sure.
small dispersed bike racks all along the edge, essentially. I think down here might be another good spot for a bike rack, honestly, either here or here.
Anything else for now?
Looking at the imagery and seeing where the eddy and leading into the picnic areas, but the larger boat tie-off and Crusher Finds and Basalt Rock viewing seating area, what's going to prevent a boater who maybe lives here or doesn't from either wanting to put in or take out there and trying to find if there is a way for trash trucks to come down to want to drive their truck and trailer down?
Ooh, they would not be able to drive down to any of these spots
Great, okay,
without obvious law breaking, which hopefully you would catch.
sure, okay.
Carry an IK down? Definitely could. You feel like carrying your raft down, good on you, but
Right.
yeah, no, they definitely could not drive into the park.
I'm just thinking of it short-term before Art Base gets built and the area gets built out.
Yeah, fair enough. Presumably it would stay fenced. I mean, either as this went under construction or as it was still privately owned, I think the fence would stay up. So again, someone would have to
Sure.
take down a fence to drive down here.
Okay.
Anything else, Tim? Gary?
I don't have any questions.
Comments?
Comments? I really like that you incorporated some of the hard urban parts of the first plan, the other plan that you were looking at, into the area around the big tree. Because I do think there needs to be that urban interface. I think people will use it, and as more businesses kind of come around, I mean, especially in the summer, it's a great place to go and have your lunch outside and kind of meet there. And so I think that was a good inclusion in this. I like the misting feature. At first I was a little like, should we be using water? But, I really think this is the most efficient, and it's really something that I think people would really like. And it's kind of something different, but it shows that we're trying to conserve water by not having a full-on water feature there. So overall, I think a lot of this is gonna be, these are still concepts. I mean, the hay bale features and all this stuff, it's gonna take some time. How you design the band shell, I don't wanna get too critical on it now, because I'm sure there's gonna be a huge piece when we go to design it. But I think overall the concept, I really like the circular. I like how people can flow through here. And, I've been walking through the Old Palm Park area a lot lately with an older dog, and it's really kind of awesome to be able to incorporate this into it. And I just, I think I'm pretty good to kind of move this forward and, see what comes about with the development plan and see how we can incorporate all this together. So I think overall, good job. And I really love the fact that there's been so much community have put a lot into this. The Post Committee put a ton of time into this, and between you guys and staff have really brought together a pretty workable plan that's not, I don't see this being, this is not an inexpensive, but this is not something that's gonna be, break the bank type of project. So that's my comments.
I think it's awesome. I think it's a great merge of both plans. I was a huge fan of the first plan, the more boxy one.
Front
I
porch,
love
yeah.
the little bit of integration, and I think it's a great mix, and I can't wait to see it executed. It's gonna be a great spot for the town.
Thanks, Ron. Bill?
Same. Lots of congratulations to you guys for doing some great work here. I had a couple observations, but most of them were related to the development side, noting, for instance, that the configuration of what appears to be kind of the art base and the commercial space for the restaurant or whatever seem to have changed, and it could be in a very good way. the thing that was really important to me about that was the integration of the arts dimension, the arts identity with the river park. And you guys have done a great job in suggesting there be a sculpture garden of sorts. I don't necessarily think that, well, I would love to see us use that for the appreciation of sculpture and art in a variety of different ways. And given all of the other play features, if that one didn't, for instance, have to be climbed upon, if it could be for observation and appreciation in different ways, that'd be kind of cool. I guess the one big comment I have is that since the town's kind of been wrapped around an axle for the past 5 years about preserving this whole view shed and not building on the sacred triangle, it kind of seemed at odds with what the town has wrestled with to put a bathroom there. So I would probably suggest that we keep the toilets in the public space and not put a building on the sacred green space that we have labored long and hard as a town to get over.
So just really quickly, Elise pulled up the kind of more technical drawing, I guess, that had a lot of our constraints. And so if you look, this is right at the four corners, and what we considered, let's say when we place the band shell or kind of the edge of the berm, the first edge of these trees, really no vertical features, you can tell in this space here. And then to do the bus shelter and restrooms, I mean, we have to do a bus shelter no matter what. Obviously, that can be pretty small. And really, a two-holer doesn't add an awful lot to that, depending on, you know, how big of a restaurant room we're looking at. But then that would be integrated kind of as you got into the verticalness of the mosque. So it's good feedback and just kind of something to think about as you guys wrestle with, you know, where that would be, et cetera.
Again, we've talked about it so much, and so, again, it would seem somewhat a pity to sacrifice all of that discussion and community input for the sake of only a two-holer. If it's only that, put it in the other building. But otherwise, I think the configuration, the layout, the community serving elements are absolutely great. I guess to get back to the area, and this is going to be kind of the question for Tim and Co., what was originally described was this interface between the art base and the maker space. And if one of our goals and objectives in this whole effort was to promote vitality in the downtown core, it's going to be really, really important to have that dynamic between the maker space and the art base, because that's where the vitality is really going to come on a day in, day out basis. We're not going to have concerts every day. We're not going to have other functions every day. And so if that is not preserved, then I think we have seriously compromised one of our major objectives.
Cool. I won't respond to that.
Yeah. So Tim, that's going to be over to you, I guess.
I just wondered if you had a chance to look at this revised plan
Sorry, I'm late.
to the point where you even had anything to add. I think there will be more opportunities.
Yeah, at the moment I don't, but thank you.
Well, I mean, I
Jen,
feel
then-
like
Sorry.
I have felt a lot of ownership about this thing for many, many years, and I personally think that it is time for the public and the committees and planning commission to do what they do. And of course, the consultants, I think you guys are doing a great job. I will refrain from micromanaging on this planning effort that you're making, because I think you're doing a great job and you have a different perspective than people sitting up here. And I do love to hear from the folks up here as well, but for me, I'm past the torch. Jen?
I am so excited about the evolution and seeing all of these different plans come together, and they're just getting better and better and more realistic. I think that's just the 3.5 years on council, seeing the reality. I'm excited about this plan. I see, again, the word realistic, I see the realism with it. It's got really something for everyone. I really do support the idea of the bathrooms with the bus stand. Being on the Crown Mountain Park Board, looking at some of the events that are hosted there that are around 4,000 people, the bathrooms can get to be the bit of a crux point. And so considering where, on the plaza area, porta potties can be placed there. But just thinking about scaling up that availability to, have a party dress, but be able to put a jacket on that matches it, if I could make a comparison there. And then I'm really, this is engineering, but down the road, just thinking about drainage. And currently, I go to this park every single day of the year. And it is pretty swampy around where the slack lines are drawn
Yeah,
in.
So there's kind of a low swale all the way through here that, honestly pops out about where that sand area is. And so some of that would remain a bit, just because we won't necessarily be doing a ton of regrading in this area. So you'll still have a little bit of time in the spring that it can be, a little bit more challenging. So we may look at how we can solve that, whether there's a little bit of, under drainage or something like that.
Exactly, and so for us to really keep that in mind with the development that's going in and the water that's going to shed off of that is going to be tremendous. And so if they can contour or keep their drainage within their plat, but hey, we all know water runs downhill. So I'd really like to think about that from an engineering standpoint of how we can maximize and keep a lot of this area usable year-round.
So we've got about 3 minutes. Is there anybody on any of the committees that has a burning desire to make a comment? Bill?
Well, I want to compliment you guys.
You gotta go.
You gotta come to a mic.
Mike? Mike?
I want to compliment you guys on integrating the two plans. The other plan had a much more urban feel to it, and I think this accomplishes a lot of that in kind of a very subtle sort of way, and especially how it transits from the bus stop into the center of the park and from downtown into the center of the park. It has sort of a feeling, kind of like a mini Luxembourg Gardens with the trees planted on a radial fashion and down into the center of the park, which has that kind of roundy kind of thing. And I also really, really appreciate the fact that the ADA access was maintained. I think it's up to us to do as best a job with that as possible. And last time I did make a push for the caboose, and I still want to just put in a plug for the caboose, even though that caboose is a difficult caboose to move, being so old and fragile. I don't think cabooses are really expensive. And if we decide to go the caboose route, we could probably get another at a reasonable cost. But it's so iconic for the town to have that sort of thing. That's my personal feeling. But I do want to commend you guys for melding the functional aspects of the two plans and keeping the visual of the Eddy out.
Thank you for your presentation. It was super clear and concise. You made it was more easily understood by me than the last one for some reason. I think it's because it's just one
technology,
now.
but yeah.
It's just one now. And thanks everybody for coming. I know you didn't all get to speak tonight, but the work that you've put in is obvious. Thanks very much. And we are going to adjourn for a quick break for council to grab some food. And we'll be back here at 6 o'clock. If you want to really have some fun, come back.
So I was assuming you guys didn't want to say anything, right?
if we could get a 6:02-ish or 3, if we could just get a roll call, then. Okay.
Ryan Slack,
Here.
Jackie Whitson,
Here,
Gary Tenenbaum,
Here.
Auden Schendler,
Here?
Jennifer Riffle,
Present.
Phil Infante.
Katie is not coming.
She's not coming. Okay,
She was getting so late that she didn't want to.
good to know, thank you.
Grassroots, are we ready over there?
We have been rolling for roll call.
Oh, goody. Thank you. As always, we want to thank Grassroots for being here and recording live. They also play these very interesting meetings over and over again on grassrootstv.org, so you can catch them there. And Amy is here recording for the first part, right, Amy? And then Shannon is coming. Okay, thanks, guys. The Mayor's Coffee is tomorrow at Cece's from 8 to 8:30. Sometimes Ryan Mahoney, our town manager, is there, and sometimes our police chief is there. If you want some really interesting information, you can talk to them. Also, one other announcement we wanted to make is that the town is seeking an interested individual to sit on the Roaring Fork Valley Regional Planning Commission. It's a person that will be recommended by the town council to Eagle County. So if anybody's interested, did you say?
Oh, no, sorry, just.
Oh, I thought you were saying, shut up, Jackie. Something. Zip it, zip it, zip it, zip it. No, I can't.
The
Come on in,
mustache
guys.
is getting him.
See me.
Hi,
If you're
come on in.
interested, contact me.
Come on in and have a seat. Hi.
Oh, God, that's too funny. Okay, so, the most fun that we ever have here, we're going to do right now, which is to acknowledge the student citizens of the month from the Basalt Public Schools. The awards are based on the 6 pillars of character, and tonight's pillar, or November's pillar, is respect. And what that means to the folks that wrote this is treat others with respect and follow the golden rule, so you people are special. Be tolerant of differences. Use good manners, not bad language. Be considerate of the feelings of others. Do not threaten, hit, or hurt anyone. Do the opposite of that, right? Deal peacefully with anger, insults, and disagreements. So, we have passed out the awards, and I think that, given that Auden doesn't look quite ready, I'll ask Auden to go first.
Okay. Sadira Reinstar, are you here?
Sadira here?
No, I'm off the hook.
No, you're not.
No, you
Take
get Katie's.
Give him Katie's.
There.
Thanks, Auden.
Ilahana Hernandez, am I pronouncing it right? Ileana.
Liana, yay! You can go right there and talk to this man right here.
See, he's going to.
I'm gonna read your award here. Ileana is always respectful of adults and her peers. She watches what goes on around her with apparent thought and then respectfully responds to others' comments, actions, and needs. She'll work with any student and do so patiently. This ability to work patiently with a peer is a good example of the respect she shows because it shows she understands where another person is coming from and communicates that with them in a way that shows that understanding. Ileana rarely has disagreements with others. Wow, that's more than we can say for ourselves here.
You looked right at me. Why did you do that?
But when something arises, she quietly allows conversation to occur and speaks her mind using calm, kind, and understanding words that encourage a fair resolution to be reached. Ileana is an easy choice for a respectful student in 2nd grade, Miss Talbot. Wow, that's amazing. So you get...
Can we shake your hand? Can we all shake your hand?
Congratulations.
And now this man.
Super well done.
Watch your step.
Great job.
I'll take a high five.
Yeah.
Don't forget your pool pad.
Yeah,
It fell down.
Is that actually
I was
the
just
pool?
looking to see what it was.
There
There
you
you
go.
go.
Thank you.
And then we all give you a round of applause. Yay!
Bill, do you want to go?
I would love to.
Okay.
And I have got the incredible honor of inviting Maverick Dombrowski. That is one heck of a name. You got a lot to live up to. Maverick Dombrowski, 8th grade. Maverick arrives to class every day with a smile on his face and kind words for everyone around him. He is a role model for other students in the respect he has towards his and his classmates' learning. He can be found encouraging and grouping himself with others who tend to stay quiet in class. Nice job, Maverick. Congratulations.
Nice work.
High five. Yeah.
How fun is that? Jen, do you want to go?
Sure. I have the honor of R-E-S-P-E-C-T, Juliana Carpenter. Suck it to me, suck it to me, suck it to me, suck it to me. Freshman Juliana Carpenter always comes to class with a smile and enthusiasm. She goes out of her way to be friendly and open, showing respect for the teacher and peers. Juliana is always on time and does all of her work with fidelity. Juliana respects the culture of learning that we strive for and serves as a model for other students. This is nominated by Tony Alcantara.
Woo!
Suck it to me, suck it to me, suck it to me, suck it to me.
Nice job.
Yeah.
Gary?
I've got, is Georgia here? Georgia Sealers? Nope,
No, Georgia?
Sears.
Sorry,
that's okay.
Ryan.
How about Luca Hurtado Wise?
Luca?
What's up, man? Luca is a second grader who demonstrates respect in class and throughout the school day. Luca is able to respect his teachers, his classmates, and others around him every day. He always uses good manners in class and is considerate of his classmates. During lessons, Luca focuses attention and listens to directions so he is able to start his work right away. Luca is always able to use kind words when dealing with conflicts. He is able to hear both sides of the argument and come up with solutions. Luca is a great example of a respectful second grader. Thanks, Luca. Miss Anderson and Miss Meserve.
Where'd you get out of here?
Come on over. Yeah. Nice round robin. And here's your,
Here you go, that's your award.
yay!
Is it true that the pool passes was in there? Because they were all falling
Well,
out.
it's just a notification.
Oh,
that
is it
they get a pool
notification?
pass next.
Okay, so everybody that got awards tonight will get a pool pass for the summer, which is awesome. It's free, of course. And also, I think someone's gonna take a photo out there in the hallway. Is that still the case? Sure. Okay, sure. So thank you so much for coming in and for doing such great work, being respectful, et cetera.
Sometimes they come in with the next.
Sometimes we do it the next But, you know, I've thought of that before.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things where, but if they wanna come in, it'd be great to have them.
Even bugging me at a meeting. Can you do this?
Yeah, we can take a quick picture. This agenda's not ridiculous. I'll, hi everyone, I'm Miss Whitsitt. We can get, the consent agenda. So, we have on the consent agenda the minutes and resolution number 41, series of 2018, of the Town Council of Basalt authorizing a mail ballot election to be held on April 7th, 2020, and authorizing the town clerk to appoint election judges. Everyone good with that?
Mayor, I move the
Nope,
town.
no, I have a question on 4C.
Well, we're doing just 4A and 4B.
Are you? I thought we were going on all.
Foresee separately.
Okay.
Yeah, we could do separately.
Mayor, I move the town council approve consent agenda items 4A and 4B as presented.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 4C, the special meeting motion is set a special meeting for Tuesday, November 9th in lieu of a regular meeting on November 26th. Questions?
Question on that, since we are going to be, since it had been planned for the 26th, and many, like me, plan their calendars well in advance, seeing that the first reading of the budget occurs that day, I would,
On the 19th.
I cannot make it on the 19th. And so, changing this throws a big spanner in the works, and I would like to ask that we preserve the date of the 26th.
So we brought this up and got direction from council 2 months ago to not have it on the week of Thanksgiving.
I thought we were talking about Christmas. We decided we weren't going to do Christmas the week of Christmas.
No, we don't do that second meeting in December usually. So this one was just changing it, moving it forward a week so that we could have that. So, I mean, it's ultimately up to you guys. And this is just the formalization of it, but, you know, my understanding was when we brought it up in the meeting that everybody noted it in their calendars and was able to make it. So,
Okay.
up to you guys on what you want to do.
Well, and I can just go around, I was okay with the 19th, I knew it was being moved
Yeah.
for a while, but I don't know, Auden?
I mean, works for me. I think that 19th works for me. I'm flexible though.
Does the 26th work as well?
Doesn't work for me. I won't be here. So,
Isn't that the holiday?
yeah.
Oh, it's the 28th.
Yeah, well, I mean, people who travel have to go.
Okay, well, in that case, I mean, again, if the numbers don't work, I can just speak to you, get together with you and Christie separately then.
Yeah. And then that's the first reading only, of course, so.
Yeah, but again, things become whatever, enshrined, cast in stone.
Sure.
And so better to strike before that occurs
Sure.
rather than have to come back afterwards. So that's okay then.
Okay.
Again, I was,
Mayor, I move the town council set a special meeting for Tuesday, November 19th in lieu of the regular meeting of November 26th, 2019.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm turning back into Gary Kundal.
Thanks, Gary. Okay, which one was, oh, special meeting motion, got it. Okay, now is the moment when we will take comments from people who are in the audience tonight for items that are not on the agenda. We just ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes, introduce yourself. Anybody have comments for items that are not on the agenda? Okay, hearing none.
Well,
Wait, you have one?
Oh, I didn't see anybody.
She's coming.
Okay.
She was just taking over.
Sorry, Stacy, you weren't moving fast enough.
Try to be the first one. Stacy Kraft, I live in downtown Basalt. I was surprised to read in the newspaper that the town of Basalt has prioritized a goal to make CPW restore Lake Christine as a recreation area. This is an incredibly misplaced priority. When your tires are bald and your brakes are faulty, you don't prioritize getting a new paint job on your car. You fix the safety issues first. You took an oath to protect the safety of the citizens of Basalt. We're counting on you to keep us safe from very predictable fire, flood, and lead toxin hazards. That property, the shooting range, has many, many issues. Way back in 2012, Basalt's fire chief, Scott Thompson, recommended that a fire break at the shooting range be cut and irrigated, but CPW did not heed his advice. That break area burned in 2018, which spread the fire. CPW continues to operate a range without a fire break. There have been 2 fires at the range. The last one consumed 12,000 acres and came close to destroying our downtown and our historic neighborhoods. Why aren't town officials calling the governor's office on a weekly basis until CPW takes measures to make this range safe? An August 2018 newspaper article reported on a summary of range issues by CPW's J.T. Ramotsky. Ramotsky said almost a year and a half ago that environmental studies would likely be conducted on the range at some point. He said that lead is a non-regulated waste and it doesn't present a pressing short-term concern. This is all patently false. Lead is a heavily regulated neurotoxin. He also said that the range is located in a basin, vegetation is intact in the immediate area, and the public needn't worry about harmful impacts to the Roaring Fork River. This was all in a newspaper article. This assessment, as I and many others have been pointing out for years and years, is deeply flawed. The range is not it's not in a closed basin. The basin has one outlet, and it outlets into the crown gem of our town, the Roaring Fork River. 50 years of untreated, uncollected lead sits adjacent to a spring, a stream, a lake, and the Roaring Fork River. We conservatively estimate that 100,000 pounds of lead has been deposited at the shooting range over the past 20 years alone. But the range has been open for over 50 years, and a Corps request shows that that lead has never been treated or collected or removed. 100,000 pounds of lead. That's a lot of lead. The August 2019 flash flood at the shooting range should have been a huge wake-up call for our town government. You all received drone footage, video footage that showed the tremendous devastation caused by the flash flood at the range. You saw with your own eyes the large amount of range waste, the spent shot wads, the skeet clay shards that were carried down the hill by the force of the flood, and it terminated in the river. After the flood destroyed the road to the range, it was impassable. CPW's bulldozers pushed big mounds. I'll be finished in a minute.
Stacy, it's been 3.
I know, this is too important, sorry. After the
Stacy,
flood,
it's been
no.
3, and we
Okay.
hold everyone else to 3, so we're
You
gonna
don't,
ask you to hold it to 3
no.
as well. Can you finish it up quickly?
Yeah, I will.
Great.
After this flood, this most recent flood, the CPW's bulldozers pushed big mounds of debris-filled mud into the stream banks after the flood. What you can't see up there is the lead, and what no one seems to be concerned about is the lead, and what no one is testing for is the lead. We want you, the town wants you, to test immediately for lead. The town needs to do that and do their own baseline studies, and you need to insist that CPW immediately make that range fire safe. They're operating it, and they're not following through on their promises. Please do your jobs.
Others?
You don't want to respond?
Hi.
Do not respond. We do not take action or respond to public comment.
No, I'm just,
Hi all, Mike Kerr, downtown Basalt. I'm just going to follow up with what Stacy had said about the range. And, I know I've been reading some articles, I haven't been following it in a lot of detail about the green initiatives that the town is taking. And that's all great, everybody wants clean stuff, okay, but you guys are going like beyond the town in your efforts, in my opinion, and you're not even focusing on what's right here. We have a toxic waste dump right next to town that nobody's addressing. Once again, Stacy's pointing it out, and it's like an elephant in the room, and nobody's looking. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Others? I'm gonna ask Ryan Mahoney if he wants to respond, but we're not going to engage in this because it's not on the
Sure.
agenda.
Yeah, I mean, I think the newspaper article touched on the fact that Lake Christine is an existing asset and one that the state has spent quite a bit of money on, and that we would like to see it used and enhanced, because it could be a really nice addition to that area. But the discussion that we had as council and part of the goals for 2020 also dealt with the range. It dealt with the general management in that area, as well as exploring possibilities for expanding a trail system into the area. There is the state. I just in fact have called a few different times trying to figure out where they are with their environmental testing, and they have I got in touch with the gentleman that's supposed to be reviewing the test approach, if you will, like what they're going to do to go test for lead. And he said that's on his desk, and he's going to be reviewing it and making that recommendation to CPW. So we have been consistently, I have been consistently reaching out to both JT and via letter. We attended a meeting, Auden and I did, of their commission about a month and a half ago, and then their local person, Matt Yamashita, keeping tabs with them, and we would like to see action out there as well. We want to see that testing done. So, you know, I think that's something that if the council feels like we need to start pushing politically above, you know, sort of the local folks, but the fact remains that that's gonna require help to figure out who's gonna do that, and then I think ultimately we need to see what comes of Rick Mraz's recommendation on the environmental testing. So,
Thanks, Ryan.
Jackie, can I just make a quick?
Be careful, okay? Because
Yeah,
I don't want to
yeah.
engage unless
No,
we put it on the
No,
agenda.
but this is an important question because it's not, I think the comments are welcome, but they represent kind of misinformation from what happened at our public work session. So you should come to that and hear what was said. What went down was, you know, we said, hey, this is a great resource, like Christine, it should be improved, but it's clearly not the priority. And a lot of the conversation at the meeting, as we all recall, was that we need to basically push harder, because if you look at the letter, our request says a major goal here should be to explore moving the range. At the meeting, lead testing came up. Ryan and I took a half day. I took a half day off work to go to CPW, where we said we felt we were being blown off by them. So this is, you know, it's just, Stacy, the difference between, you know, what, I don't mind your comments, but I do mind kind of being accused of not caring about the issue. Yeah, so, but the newspaper wasn't entirely accurate, so it's good that we can correct the record. But one of the encouraging things from that meeting is that lead testing is gonna happen. So I think our stance is about as aggressive as it can be. It's that we're not really being listened to.
Okay, thanks, Auden. Okay, our next item is mayor and council reports and comments. Anyone? Bill?
Just to conclude, I was not at the meeting where you had the work plan discussed, but I know, Ryan, at least in the suggestions that I had submitted to you earlier, I did ask that we work with CPW and other state agencies to complete soil, groundwater, and surface water testing to identify lead and/or other pollutants in the area associated with gun range. And I know you and I have talked about this. So had Stacy and Mike not shown up, I was going to ask you where we stood with that anyway. So I guess thank you for the update, and let's persevere, because this is important. When our Serbian friends were over, they're both in enforcement, so I took them up to the range. And I didn't realize when you look from the rifle area out the range, that I thought it was kind of grassy, but I walked out there, and in fact, I was crunching through what seemed to be lots and lots of accumulated slugs. So I was actually quite surprised, and it does seem a legitimate concern that this could be contaminating ground and surface water. So thank you for pursuing it, and if we're not getting a response, I think we should pick up the phone, speak to Governor Polis and/or Joe Ryan, who heads whatever it is, CDPHE. The only other thing I noted in the comments to Todd Hartley's article congratulating everyone on 3A, congratulations to council and all who worked on that, wonderful relief. But there was a man who I don't know who asked how the budget has increased so rapidly from 2015 to 2019, more or less citing a 60% increase over the past 5 years. I checked my budgets. I can't corroborate his numbers as he states them, although the general trend is indeed a pretty significant increase in both revenues and expenditures from 2015 to 2020. And I think in the context of next week's meeting, you will want to address, and we should seek to explain how our revenues, which represent taxes levied upon our citizens, have increased as rapidly as they have, and how expenses have also increased in that same pattern.
And I think my interpretation of that was perhaps a look at the expenditures, and I'm not certain either, because I saw that.
Yeah.
And when you look at expenditures, it gives you a snapshot that perhaps is misleading, in the sense that we have a number of restricted funds that we don't necessarily spend out of every
Right.
year. We'll budget those for certain capital expenditures, things like that. And as you recall, we've had this revolving line of credit that we also, to the tune of almost $3 million, which we've about paid off this year alone, with the sale of Shining Mountain Way and the use of post funds to pay off the remainder of the underpass, a great asset for the town. But the point being that shows as a larger expenditure. You have to show it as if you're paying it off in a given year. So it can be a misleading, snapshot. And, I would encourage a gentleman who actually I don't know either, didn't
Right.
recognize the name, instead of, putting it on Facebook or in the newspaper, come talk to us. We'd love to be able to sit down and explain that stuff, so.
Yeah. And I think frankly, you guys have done such a good job at promoting our stance on accountability and good governance, that I saw this and just would love to, frankly, be open and transparent to our voters and taxpayers about the trajectory of our tax collection and expenditures.
That's good, thanks for bringing that up.
No worries.
Others? Jennifer?
I'm going to give my praise to the citizens of Basalt this meeting for the passage of 3A, approving the mill levy tax rate. That was astounding, wonderful, and such a relief for the financial future of this town and what we can do for each other, with each other. So thank you, citizens. Thank you for everyone that worked on the campaign. Thank you, staff, that worked really hard to get that ballot language on there. That I gotta put that on my top 5 accomplishments of my council, my 3 3/4 years. And then I would also.
Second thought, while
Yes.
you're at it.
All in favor? And I'd like to invite everyone that's interested tomorrow evening for the master plan review. This is a public meeting tomorrow night at the high school from 5:30 till 7 p.m. You do not have to get up and publicly speak. You get to vote with stickers. You can look at pictures. It can be a quick in and out, but we really, really honor and value your feedback. So please come and join.
Thanks, Jen. Good one. Others? Okey dokey. Manager,
Town managers report.
would you like to report anything?
Sure, just a couple things. I wanted to make sure, I put it in my Friday report from last week, but wanted to reiterate it here, that I got a personal invitation to be shared with you all from the Glenwood Springs City Manager, Deborah Figueroa. And as sort of a thank you for the passage of the resolution opposing the expansion of the mine down there in Glenwood Springs. This Saturday, November 16th, from 12 to 3, they're having a free party hosted by Smoke. They'll have free food, and they wanted to make sure that each council member knew they were personally invited.
Is it at Smoke?
Nope, it is
Glenwood
at the
Springs
community
Community.
center.
Great.
Yeah, 100 Wolfshone Road. So if you can make it, that would be great. And then, Bill, just as a quick update, Northwest Cog Rep, you had written me about that. They sent us like a sample resolution, so we're gonna go ahead and put that on the December 10th consent agenda.
Cool.
And Bill had requested to continue on that, and then Watkins is the alternate, and he typically goes. So we'll just add that in there.
Cool,
So,
thank you.
and then another quick update, since it's been a while, as it relates to a few other things. So the mud and flood mitigation that we've been working on this summer. We're about done in the neighborhood area of the Hill District. And we should be pulling out hopefully this week, just kind of doing the little last bits and pieces. I have had a couple calls about the de facto speed bump and the dip that are out there that are meant to carry water and then also divert water back to the river. Those are being striped and signed. I think a couple people have just requested that we do that, and that's just, the signs had to be ordered, and that will happen hopefully this week or early next week for that part of it. And with that, I'll leave it there.
Oh, I got one more for you.
Oh, you do? The, what is it?
Well, just really
I
to
can't read your
note
writing.
that we have, well, we have the master plan meeting tomorrow night, and the open house starts at 5:30, and we're gonna have a presentation and kind of an overview of the exercises that the public will participate in at about 5:45.
Do they have to exercise if they don't want to?
They don't, no one has to exercise, that's my motto.
Thanks, Susan, again. You know, Susan, maybe you want to just say, since you've got a TV audience here, why does anyone care about the master plan? What is it?
Well, the master plan is kind of the key document that explains how the town really wants to grow and the overall vision of the town. And the town uses the master plan in a number of ways, but one of the most important ways is that we use it when we're reviewing land use proposals that come to us from developers. And so it kind of gives the key guidance from that perspective on what the town approves, but it also gives developers keys and kind of the messages of what will be acceptable to the town so that they're not wasting their time. But it's also carried as an overall philosophy through all aspects of the town. In this particular exercise that the public's gonna do tomorrow, they are going to be looking at some projects that they can rank. And so the town can use that when they're developing their capital improvement plan. So it's really kind of a fundamental key document of the town, and it's important that it reflects the vision of the community.
Super clear explanation. Will there be food?
Yes.
What kind of food?
I don't know. I don't think we're having empanadas, but I'm not sure what kind of food.
Okay, so there will be real food there, folks, so if you have to miss dinner, come anyway.
And it'll be kids' activities, and they've been very fun, so.
That's helpful, okay, thank you. All right, our next item is an update from BAC, and BAC stands for what again?
Basalt Affordable Community Housing.
Oh, great. We just call it BAC, we have our lingo, you know? Hello, BACites.
Oh, can you, Rick, could you just grab that mic and move it down to the table too? Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. This item is the annual council check-in with BAC, the Basalt Affordable Community Housing Committee. This is in the series of check-ins with the different committees that council is doing in the budget process. I'd like to introduce the BAC members that we have here this evening. We've got Kathy Click, Doug McDonald, and Rick Stevens. I think that's it.
Could you tell us who's not here?
Yeah, we have Ann Baker and Katie, I always lose Katie's last name, Erickson. And, you know, as background, Kathy Click, the chair, has written a annual report that's in your packet. It outlines the tasks that BAC participated in this past year. It also outlines tasks that BAC would like to participate in 2020. As well as funding requests for 2020 from the affordable housing side of things. Kathy, would you like to go over some of the tasks, or would you like me to?
Sure.
I can go over it.
Okay.
So as a sort of a recap for this year, we, a lot of these projects have been ongoing. They're multi-year. For instance, the multi-jurisdictional housing task force, we participated again this year, reviewing the report and meeting with Dave Mylar and Bill Lamont recently this fall, and listening to their sort of revised plan on how they want to go forward, and ultimately making a request for $10,000 to the town council to help support that ongoing effort to look at affordable housing in a regional way. I think that you have that in your budget request. We also participated individually, but as BOC, as a group, with the master plan committee. We met with them to talk about what we have been doing, what we wanted to do, what we saw as important as far as affordable housing goes. We did review the ski company proposal and the River Park initial proposal for the affordable housing projects there. We continue to look at the housing map that we have that has available parcels that are owned by the town and that are also privately owned, and prioritizing them in terms of affordable housing projects that we would like to encourage development or affordable housing projects on those spots, which may or may not be the same as how developers are looking at them. And we also are recently, with the addition of Katie Erickson on the committee. Katie is a mortgage lender, and she has a lot of information on how the different counties, Pitkin and Garfield, work with the down payment assistance plans and offer other incentive programs for home buyers. And so we've been looking if there's ways for us to participate or mirror some of those programs, for BOC to make recommendations to the town to start considering those kinds of things. I think that covers what we've been doing, but my fellow committee members may want to say something. Or not.
Well, I think that there's two pieces to much of what we do, and part of it is what we can search for outside of the town in terms of outside help, because we're always looking for funding sources for affordable housing. And I think that working with this valley-wide association now is going to be a big help in that direction. They can point us to other resources, and I think included in that is we think we should look a little bit more towards Eagle County for assistance. They've indicated a desire to be more involved in this side of the hill, and I think that that's going to be valuable to us if they follow through with that. The other side of our needs, we will take a shot at what we can do as a town locally. And that's probably going to be more on the order of should we provide some sort of funding or changes to our zoning, perhaps. That's a little bit aggressive, perhaps, but there are things that we might be able to do, reaching out to the public and to our many HOAs to change rules that would permit more ADU development, let's say, or let's let people build ADUs if they feel they have the space and the ability, because that will definitely help us for low-income housing. So there's internal efforts and external, and so that's kind of our agenda for the next year. I think there was another local point.
Well, I think that also we wanted to start looking maybe at different sectors of employers, for instance, nonprofits versus larger employers, and see if we can come up with a way to maybe address those specific vectors' housing needs. So instead of throwing all of the Basalt employees into one pot in the employee qualifications to get an affordable housing unit, maybe we start looking at a nonprofit building, or a building that would be prioritizing the nonprofit employees in Basalt over somebody else. So just as a way not to change the pot, but just to kind of mix it up a little bit.
We had also asking for guidance from the council regarding our livability design guidelines. Now, that's been a large part of what we've done over the past year, is to evaluate proposals that come before us to see whether they meet our guidelines. I don't know whether the council has any input or thoughts about that. You've been present to some of, or knowledgeable about some of the comments that we've made about existing applications. So that's an open question. Should we simply continue with our current set of guidelines for future development?
Okay, I would say on that one, if staff has had a chance to just review the direction that that's going, that would be a good place to start, because we are supposed to be lay people here. So it would be really nice to have staff take a look and see if they're good to go with it.
I think staff's opinion is that Bach should take a look at them and see if there's some refinement that is needed.
Okay.
I think in general, this evening, Bach is just looking for council's kind of blessing on the work program that is set out in the staff memo that Bach has kind of come up with for 2020. And then maybe a little more of an update on the regional housing effort. Basically where the Regional Housing Task Force is, which is kind of headed up by David Myler and Bill Lamont, is they're looking at, for this coming year, doing a regional housing coalition. So not necessarily a regional housing authority, but a coalition of jurisdictions to get together and try to come up with projects or concepts and try to kind of jumpstart the regional housing effort. And so the request for funding that they've come up with is that they would like to get each jurisdiction to put in a bit of money to hire a employer consultant to basically kind of be an ombudsman for affordable housing in the valley and the regional effort, and kind of try to jumpstart that. So that's what the $10,000 request is. It's currently in the draft budget, so we'd like to get feedback from council on that aspect as well.
Okay. Council comments? Jennifer?
Having followed Bach for many years, and also being on the email chain with the Regional Housing Task Force, I'm so impressed with what they have achieved and how organized and effective this group has been. And so I'm very supportive of town funds going towards this valley-wide, everyone pitching in to create a similar vision. And I gotta say, they have very realistic visions and methodologies. And I feel that way as well about your work plan. I have really appreciated in the last year the suggestions that have come out of the livability and how that's reflected on some of the proposals that we have approved. They've been just a fantastic asset for the people who are going to live in those buildings. So thank you for that, and keep up that fantastic efforts that you're doing.
Of course.
Yeah.
Having been a pioneer in the Bach world, it's nice to see where it's come to over the last, 2008, I guess it started. Also, in 1981, I was lucky enough, my wife and I got our ping pong ball pulled out of a fish bowl with 104 other people for 28 units. So I'm a testament to opportunities that come with affordable housing. My point I'd like to make tonight is you guys spent a lot of time on the strategic plan, and to Susan's point about the master plan being a document for land use, it's also a document that guides the community and how it grows. You guys have identified 4 areas on the strategic plan, And what I did is I've been following this along since it's been adopted last April and trying to tie anything I think about or anything I promote in the community to that strategic plan. And there's just a couple of key things in here that I think, one thing Bach would appreciate, I think, or at least I would be to make sure that we are connected to the strategic plan as we go into 2020 and beyond. The statement that starts off by saying, "Welcome to Basalt 2030," contains language that reflects a younger community, a community that's diverse and represented by a lot of different demographics, by women, Republicans, Democrats, and so on. It's referred to in here as Aspen for the people. And when you look at Aspen now and the push that they're making for affordable housing on every piece of property they can find, I think that the key to the case for us would be to align with their governance and try to figure out how they're doing that, and maybe just tag on to their efforts and see if we can't get some of the overflow and benefit from their investors that are doing this. The modern community here is inclusive and it focuses on health and safety. It's been documented here recently that health issues are directly tied to where you live or where you don't live, or if you're trying to live somewhere and you can't find a place. We all know the workforce issues that are coming in front of us. Ensure that the town has strong candidates for council. I think this is a very big deal. I was mentored by a former mayor, and she said, you know, you'll never know who's going to move to town and what kind of contribution they're going to make to the community. Support the efforts of different community groups. This goes to Kathy's comments about nonprofits whose missions or initiatives provide positive social and cultural outcomes to the community. I think that's a big deal. Collaborate with regional partners, we've talked about that. In the built environment, it talks about explore creative ways, support regional solutions, investigate new ideas for permanent housing projects or products over in the local economy, support improvements in access to affordable housing and childcare. Those things are going to contribute to a vibrant local economy. Review the town's policies and identify possible efficiencies. I think that was in our report. And that's been an ongoing conversation for quite a while. The natural environment is interesting because the more people that come here that are spread out over the landscape, the more impact we see to the natural environment. So I think density is an issue that needs to be resolved. It's been on the table for a long time. I think that we need to preserve and maintain our open spaces and try to focus development where we said we were going to in the urban growth boundary. So anyway, I would like to have more feedback from staff and council on how we can really align with the strategic plan to help you implement the goals that are stated here, because I think that's a collective impact that we could create, and that would attract, I think, investors to the community to help us build this stuff. So
Did you have something, Gary?
that's my 2 cents.
Well, one of the barriers I saw, and when you were recapping, you know, all the things that you guys are doing and how it relates to strategic plans and stuff, one of the barriers I see that we really need to address is public perception of affordable housing. I think we saw that a lot when the SKICO came in and proposed their housing. You know, I think the reality for the town is everyone loves affordable housing until it's near them, but we need affordable housing everywhere. So I think one of the barriers we need to address is telling the story, Rick's story, other people's story. My wife's story is they all got so many people got to start here because they got an affordable housing unit. My wife did it, Rick did it, and it's a story that has to start being told in a way that does not create these other barriers where people come in and impose it because I don't want that in my backyard. It's going to lower my property values. It's going to do this. It's going to do that. And so I want to see that as a barrier that we could break. And I think coming from the council, it's one thing, but coming from the community is another. And so I'm really hoping that as we do the master plan and all this other stuff, is really trying to tell a story better about the need for affordable housing and what it does for the community overall. And because sitting through meetings where people are not happy about having affordable housing near them is upsetting to me as a council person. And I just don't think we haven't done a good job of telling that story. So,
Well, you know, just to weigh in, I think the key
Thanks,
to the
Gary.
case is, you know, suggesting to people in the development community that these parcels you've identified on the map, which have been identified previously as receiving areas for affordable housing, that message goes out there, so there's no mistaking what the intent is. And, you know, people come in here and the expectations are already set. And that's, I think, where we've kind of backed on and off the gas pedal a little bit and left ourselves exposed to, you know, what you're talking about. Aspen seems to have overcome it here recently, but it's taken a huge effort on their part to get it through. They've got multi-million-dollar projects coming out of the pipeline, and you know, every one of them's being met with some kind of resistance. But anyway, there's a solution, and it's be forward-thinking and identifying these things in a proactive way, and then, you know, having an implementation strategy. It's
Bill?
Couple quick comments, beginning with a real thank you for the report that you provided. I would love to suggest that your report become a model for what all other committees produce, because it was substantive and it was short. So thanks very, very much. It gave me a good idea of what you've done and where you're going. I also really appreciate your guys' effort for coming in and just having a discussion with us, because this is way too rare. On the substance, the commitment to regionalism, I think, is extremely important, and that should be enshrined in whatever Bach does, as should our own articulation of our strategy. So again, thank you very much for pinning your past activities and future activities to both of those two basic principles. On the notion of a regional housing coalition, goes without saying, I'm very supportive of that to the extent that Bach can represent our town and the town can be party to that. Fabulous. I think we want to act in a manner that's consistent with what other jurisdictions are doing, but your letter suggests a $20,000 contribution, and if others are going to give that much or contribute that much, this is way too important not to follow in a manner that would be consistent. And I certainly would support $20,000 if that's what the others are doing as well, and hopefully we could push that through the budget. But on the note, the question of financing, Ryan and Christy and I have talked about kind of doing a calculation of what we contribute to our strategic priorities, how we invest our taxpayer funds in the big things. Affordable housing is one of them. And I'd love to get a tally of what exactly we do spend. It isn't just what we buy, but it's the interest expense associated with the revolving lines of credit. It's the inferred cost of town staff, so that we can fairly and accurately represent to our taxpayers exactly what this town is doing. Because my impression is that we're doing a lot on affordable housing. We can always do more, but if we can put a dollar value and quantify what we're doing, I think that would be, you know, valuable. So just to let you know, I am interested to see us calculate. On the master plan, I know you guys have been very actively involved with that. Fantastic. I hope that the master plan will go well beyond defining where we're going to have dense development or not. So I would hope, from the perspective of affordable housing, you would help us enshrine dimensions that are associated with, say, the movement away from fossil fuels towards electrification, the movement towards renewables like solar panels, or issues in the master plan that would reflect resilience that has to be part of our planning process. And I think there is a role for you in that, because the placement of affordable housing is going to be conscious of those things. And then the last point, on the financing options, I am strongly in favor of private sector-led initiatives, and will always support those, but looking for public-private partnerships, I think, is fantastic. Habitat being the foremost. If we can advance more of those, that would be great, and I think council can probably help identify partners and bring parties together, and we too would have a role in future initiatives, as we did with Habitat. But Eagle County has definitely done some really progressive stuff, And in speaking with some of our county commissioners, they are interested to do more in our valley. And some of the models that I've talked to them about are the notion of buying down deed restrictions. They've launched a project up in Edwards. Don't know what the final outcome will be, but it looks super promising. And so again, let me encourage you to continue speaking to the Eagle, whomever it is, the staff, the private sector, or the council, or the commissioners themselves, and let us know what we can do to support you in those efforts too.
Anyway, yeah, please go.
Super quickly, first, thank you for your work. Second, I'm a product of affordable housing too. I was in Thompson Corner in Carbondale and then moved to Basalt. Yeah. But when we had a meeting with the climate group and we discussed the need for the master plan to be a climate plan as well, I think it needs to be a housing plan too, and I think we need you, but also council, to push hard on this. In certain areas, ADUs is really important. I passed a lot in town, was talking to a neighbor, and they said, yeah, they're gonna put a duplex there. And I was like, that's great. Why isn't someone encouraging them to put a duplex and 2 ADUs? So I'd love to see the codes, the zoning change a little bit so that we actively encourage these things. I know in the past, they've come up, ADUs have come up, and all the neighbors oppose them, as usual, but we've approved them, and that's great. But we should make it even easier. And another example would be minimum lot size, eliminating minimum lot size. So I'm really gonna be looking at the master plan on that. I think we all should, and you all should push on that as well, because there's enough people here that agree on that we could move the needle.
Only one thing about that is that there's not a lot of neighborhoods that are zoned neighborhoods. Ours is one, the Old Town is one of them, but for instance, Elk Run it's a PUD.
Right.
So that's why we really need to start working with the HOAs and figure out how to make, instead of making those into VRBOs and renting out rooms, how do we make those into actual units for the community?
By the way, that's another huge issue, VRBO, that we're gonna have to launch into at some point.
Everybody has got the same problem.
Yeah.
So, does anybody have any last words for these guys? I mean, I think you're hearing general support from this crew, and keep going. I mean, I have a short comment, and mine is I pick out partnerships out of this, because that is what I have seen on my watch work over and over again, as well as ADUs and zoning, et cetera, et cetera. So we will cut you loose at this point, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Yes. No. We are way behind. Christy, are you getting ready to launch?
Yes, I am. I think I was born ready to talk about financial statements.
Yes, the enthusiasm.
Silly question. Council presentations, yeah. I applied for a smaller one now, because now I'm living in. Awesome. All right.
You know what? Can I stop for a second? Would it be okay if we made our appointment before we did this, or is this short?
We could do the appointment first.
I mean, if this is really only 5 minutes?
It'll probably be more like 10, maybe.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, okay, I'm fine either way. Because really it's like I do both of them kind of anyway, so. So looking at our quarterly financial report, which was initially created through the Finance Advisory Board when it was first started, we're keeping the same format for now. And the really great news about this is that our revenues in our general fund are looking fairly strong. When you look at the tax revenue at 77%, that's, I mean, pretty much we're going to come in on budget on our tax revenue, maybe a little bit over. which is our general operating revenue mostly. We do have some restricted revenue in there that's going to be separated out in future quarterly financial reports, which would include your cigarette and lodging tax and your post-sales tax. License, permits and fees, the thing that really is higher than budget, you see some of them over 100% there, is mostly our restricted funding, and we do that purposefully to make sure that we're not overspending our restrictions during the year, and that we're just being thoughtful about which things we think are going to come online at the beginning of the year. So that's fairly normal to have a little bit additional on those budgets. The thing that is coming in really strong is our special improvement fees. This year we had a couple of big developments come in, and also our unrestricted building permits are favorable as well, because we had a fairly strong economy this year, and those are going to come in ahead of budget, those two. The one that is going to come in a little behind budget is our affordable housing, because we dropped off the 6 units because of the sale of Shining Mountain Way. So for those 4 months or so, we'll lose that revenue for this year. When you look at intergovernmental revenue from the state and highway use tax grants, et cetera, that's also doing fairly well. The grants for flood mitigation, the 1.3 million, that'll probably come in around $970,000 to $1 million for the year. So we're just starting to wrap that one up. We should have some better numbers here in the next couple of weeks on that as we get our final invoices in. Maybe a month. Hopefully not a month, but it just depends on when we get those in. And then looking at our service charges, the one thing I wanted to note is that with Brian now being here and also running the pool for this summer, he did a really great job with lessons and really improving those, like getting more revenues in and getting more people doing that. So that one's coming in good. And interest earnings, because we had most of the year where we had higher interest earnings than we did the prior year. And also we did not spend a lot of our restricted funding, for example, for post. So then you have that funding sitting in your bank account versus spent. So that also helps us on the interest earnings side. When you look at the total revenue before other, okay, 78.8%, that's coming in right about 3/4 of the year, which is where you want to see it. With all that said and done.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Please, yes.
What does total revenue before other mean?
So this is what I'm trying to do is start to capture what you're going to see on your audited financial report. And so because we have what's considered financing sources and uses, those usually aren't included in your other stuff and revenues. That's usually separated out on the bottom of your financial statements because it's stuff that you're not going to see year over year. It would be weird to put in the Shining Mountain Way sale because it'll skew your financial results unless you kind of pick those out separately in the bottom of your financial report, which is why GAAP and GASB require that on the audited financials. So that's why I did the same thing with Shining Mountain Way, the COPs, certificates of participation for the Tabor refund, and then our water operating transfers in. Those 3 are considered financing sources according to that. So,
Okay.
did I help you with that, or
I was
did
hoping
I?
you would make a sentence out of that.
Just before the other expenses that are not
Before-
typical.
Before the expenses that are not here.
They're not typical.
They're
Okay,
atypical
what does
expenses.
before
Yeah.
other mean?
Yeah, they're atypical and those are things-
Atypical, that's good, that's fine.
finance. They're financing too. I mean,
Right.
the COPs are financing, and so is the sale of a property.
Got it,
Second time around was a charm.
yes, it was
Okay.
the atypical that got me.
Gotcha. Okay, good. All right, so that's where we're at on our revenue side. On the expenditures, if you look at the total expense before other, at 42.6%, it looks like we're not spending, you would anticipate usually 75% spent. But we have some things like, for example, with the Basalt River Park that haven't gone through with post. That's a really huge expenditure, 3.5 million that we still have sitting out there on post of the 3.9 million. So that one's really big. And then we've got a couple other things in there too that are usually towards the end of the year. We have some projects and stuff that we start spending and paying down on this time of year. On the one thing I did want to note to Bill, is that we do have the affordable housing, as a separate, department this year. So that is now, listed on our quarterly financial report, so you can see every quarter, and also on our audit and everything else, like how that's running, because before that, you're right, that wasn't, in there separate.
Yes, Bill?
Yes, and I had that highlighted as well, and assumed that we were running under budget simply because we had sold Shiny Mountain.
Oh, yes, and that's on the expenditure side. But actually there was $138,000, or let me see, what was that number? Yeah, 131,000, sorry, 131,885, that we spent on the, Basalt Vista project. As a part of that, we weren't anticipating to spend that. And what we did is, that council, if you remember, had, said that we were going to pay the water tap fees. So you also see that in the revenue for your water fund.
Right.
So that was a little over budget on that part of it, but there was other things, you know, how budgets ebb and flow. So we may come in a little over on our affordable housing overall, but it'll be close on expense side. Let's see here. Yeah, so most of the budgets are where you would imagine they would be this time of the year. The public parks, gardens and parks, is only showing about 50% spent. They have a couple of projects that are gonna be going on towards the end of the year. And then also we brought in more, post revenue, which goes to, the 20% goes to offset, our parks maintenance. So that also helps them to save cost in that department. Let's see. And then the other financing uses is the same as the sources. Those are expenses from, your financing. So that's what shows up on the other side, on the budget side with the expenditures and also what we show to date. And that's where we're at on that. Okay. Any questions on the general fund?
Questions?
Okay. Okay. So now, if you go to the next page on your bond fund, I always say this is pretty easy and in and out. We have revenue in for our bond repayments for the bonds that have been approved by our voters, and expenditures out, which equal our debt service, and our treasurer and administrative fees. We are going to be over budget slightly on this one, because if you note, our treasurer fees on the actual are showing as $18,178 through September 30th. That is pretty trued up to actual on what we should have spent out of the bond fund. It's a change in how we're reporting it, because we're basing it on the percentage mill levy rate versus the percent of total, so that I could separate out the general fund from the bond fund and make sure that everything's getting separated a little differently than we did before. So, but we will take a little bit of a hit on being over budget on that in our bond fund, but 12,000, it's not terrible. So then you go into our water fund, and that is looking good on our water service budget. That is about where we would anticipate we should be, given that our fourth quarter is a pretty low billing, because we get most in the summer. So we should be about on budget on that one. And if you look at your tap fees and surcharges, those amounts are over or favorable to our budget because of what I said, Basalt Vista before too. And everything else is fairly consistent with what we would want to see. Expenditure side, the only thing that I know we're not going to spend is Tucker Lane this year. That's been changed to another fiscal year. And that was $75,000, but everything else should be on our budget as we had budgeted for. Conservation Trust Fund, those are our lottery proceeds we get from the state. And so that's, we should be getting in around $20,000 this year. And then that 25,000 we had budgeted was supposed to help with the Basalt River Park, which will be transferred into next year. That will help with that. Okay. Any questions?
Questions on this part? Anybody?
Okay.
Kudos.
Thank you.
Go. Did you say yes? You have a question?
No, I said kudos.
Oh, kudos, yes.
General questions.
Yeah, sure.
Just about revenues, particularly on the revenue side, and I guess, again, I had intended to bring it up earlier, but on the grants, just because we are coming in so far behind, are we simply going to see that money in a different fiscal year, or are we not going to see 1.3 million in flood mitigation money?
We may see $1 million instead of 1.3 million.
Okay. Is that enough
So
to,
the,
is
can
that
I?
enough to finance what we need to do,
Yeah.
or?
It is, yeah. So basically what happens when NRCS first came out and they did their inspection all around Basalt Mountain, they go and they look and they say, okay, we think we should do these 20 projects. And then when we actually get the engineer on board, we went through, we got with Eagle County, we got with CPW, and we prioritized projects. Some we just won't do. They weren't gonna be of value. Others we added on new ones. And so the sum total ends up being about $1 million. When NRCS first comes out, they're just, it's kind of a best guess. So, so we were able to complete all of the, flood mitigation that we wanted to.
And that's the real concern.
Yeah, and the other thing is a lot of times you have to kind of bet a little high, but you don't know which of the landowners are going to approve the work on their property as well. So, and then, we can't pay the engineer costs up front because the grant doesn't pay for it. So then we have to kind of punk kick a little bit too.
And then all the other questions I'll address later this week, hopefully with you guys.
Great. Thanks, Bill. Okay.
Thank you, Christy.
You're welcome.
So while you're in the batter's box,
Yeah,
would you
sure.
like to address the next item, which is an introduction?
Absolutely. So Cheryl, can you come up here? So the subcommittee of council and myself sat down and interviewed Cheryl a few weeks back ago now for the Finance Advisory Board. And they made that recommendation, we all did, to have her as our newest Finance Advisory Board member, which we're very excited about. She has a lot of experience at accounting and just really interested in the community is what I gathered from her. And I just loved her attitude. It was just fantastic. I just think she's going to have a lot to bring to this board. Thank you.
Do you want to say anything, Cheryl? You don't have to.
Thank you for your consideration.
I've known Cheryl for a long time, so. Okay,
Thank you for volunteering.
yes,
Thank you for serving,
absolutely.
exactly.
Fill another seat.
She's
Have
got
another
she's
banker
got a
on
big
board,
job
too.
already.
Yes.
Okay, so I guess this requires a motion.
Mayor, I move the town council appoint Cheryl
Ruppel.
Ruppel, sorry. Cheryl Ruppel, to the Basalt Financial Advisory Board.
Second? What?
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Have fun.
Yay.
She'll make it fun
She
between
will make it fun.
between her and Simon.
Her and Simon and
Oh my
Doug.
God.
If Christy has anything to do with it,
It's gonna be
she'll
fun.
make it fun.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Okay, a motion for the council to convene as the local liquor authority.
Mayor, I
please.
move the town council convene as the local liquor authority.
Lickle. Lickle.
Have you been lickle?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okey dokey. Hi. Hi. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks. Is this you, Pam?
This is me.
Okay.
This is Eddie Zane.
Oh,
So Eddie, they're going to ask you to probably speak into the microphone a little
You're
better.
on TV.
they yell at all of us. We don't.
me about that.
They'll yell Mike at you. Yes.
So this evening, we are welcoming Zane's Tavern application to the town. We'll see how council responds. We are bringing this a little early to council. We are not anticipating any opening until February of 2020. But we wanted to see for sure if we were going to get a liquor license in order to proceed with his construction and his internal, design of his restaurant
Good idea.
at Zane's Tavern. This will be located at 190 Robinson Street. We finally settled on that address. We went back and forth a little bit. The property is, you can see the comments and conditions by the investigating agencies. We have spoken with Eddie about the outdoor amplified music and that the proposed outdoor television would not be permitted at that location. The building department has only recently obtained their tenant finish permit, so we're a long ways away from getting a CO. Eddie is quite aware that he will not get his liquor license until the CO is issued. And he is working, the police department has done their internal records check and come up with nothing negative in terms of Eddie or Anna, the applicants' backgrounds. The fire department is going to continue to work with Eddie on the internal design of the place and make sure that it's safe for the public as well. The health department is working with Eddie. They are requesting a design of the kitchen and the actual appliances that he will be using, so he's having to come up with that a little bit ahead of time as well.
I've already submitted that.
And, okay, great, you've worked with, gotten in touch with them, so they're working closely. A fingerprint background check indicates no criminal violations by Eddie or Anna. They do have the lease covering the full first-year term. The municipal code does require that he keep a copy of the state liquor and beer codes on the premises. And we have also talked about the responsible training classes. So based on staff investigations, the findings are listed in this memo that staff or that council can make, the liquor authority can make. And staff has made a recommendation and a suggested motion. If council has any questions of Eddie or, and this is a public hearing, so we would take public comment.
I think we'll just go ahead and do the public hearing first so we can get any comments that may possibly be out there. We'll open the public hearing now. Is there anyone that has comment regarding this application? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and go to council for questions or any comments that you may have regarding the application. Hearing none, going, gone, hearing none. Do you have anything that you would like to say regarding this application?
Pam suggested I give you guys a little background on me. I do have 2 other locations. I have one on the Snowmass Village Mall, and I have another 2 blocks from the gondola in Aspen. And we're basically we're being billed as a sports bar, but we're more of like a local tavern that has a lot of TVs, and we're affordable. Almost all the food's homemade, made from scratch. I do a late night kitchen, so my plan is to keep the kitchen open till midnight every night, 7 nights a week. It works in Snowmass. If I can make it work in Snowmass, I think I can make it anywhere. So, even in the off season. And I've been getting a lot of positive feedback because people tend to say that you can't get anything past 9 o'clock in Basalt or Willits or anywhere unless you go to the market. So we're hoping to fill that niche and also to have sports broadcasting for football games, hockey, baseball. We support a lot of the local youth athletics. I'm actually a coach. I coach football, hockey, softball at the high school. And we also donate to a lot of like Aspen Junior Hockey. We're boosters at the football for the Aspen High School, so I guess I'll be supporting the Basalt schools now.
I guess you will.
Yeah. So aside from that, that's it for me.
I
Great,
guess the
thank
only
you.
thing I would add too is that
Yeah.
Eddie did submit petitions with 14 pages of signatures, all in favor of a liquor license at his proposed location.
Hard to find anybody in Basalt that doesn't want another bar.
Yeah. And every one of those, I got everyone. I walked around Willits and went to every single business and got employees and owners to sign.
Nice. Gary?
I was just gonna move that the town council approve a new tavern liquor license for Avalon Willets LLC, doing business as Zane's Tavern. Do I have to read all this, Pam?
It wouldn't
To
hurt.
be located at 190 Robinson Street, Basalt, contingent on the applicant fulfilling the requirements and conditions of the staff recommendation and of each investigating agency as noted in the memo herein dated November 12, 2019, or which may appear as a result from future agency review and inspections related to this licensing action.
Second.
That was big.
Thank you.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Welcome to Basalt.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're excited. We're excited.
So am I.
Wasn't too treacherous, was it? Okay. Thank you for coming, Eddie.
Mayor, I move the town council adjourn the local liquor authority and reconvene the town council.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, first reading of ordinance 26, an ordinance of the town council creating a special fund account related to ownership of units at Riverside Plaza, Lot BC. Christie again.
Well, we were actually, we just got a chance today, the auditor's been sick, and so we just talked to him today, actually Jeff did, and we revisited how we want to handle this particular issue with the HOA, and we decided that maybe a better way to account for it is in a department within the general fund, instead of having its very own fund. And that the auditor was okay with that, the way of handling it, so we were gonna see if we could actually skip it and just continue forward.
That's, so you mean not take any action?
Not take any action, ma'am.
Oh, that's great. So we don't really need to have much of anything.
No.
Thank you,
But-
Christie.
Yeah, I just wanna let you know what happened and what changed, so you guys were aware of how we'd be handling that.
Super. Okay, then we will move on to first reading of ordinance 27, an ordinance of the town amending the town, what?
I think it's, I was gonna say, I think it's okay because no formal action's being taken
Yeah.
one way or the other. We're moving on to the next agenda item and it fails for any lack of motion to approve. So we're on to the next thing.
Okay.
Good job.
Green light to go forward.
Something, didn't you?
Thank you, Jeff.
Waiting for
I
my
mean,
time to shine.
Never have I had a motion to do nothing.
You had already known what he was gonna say, and so you just proceeded.
Yeah.
Well,
Can read his mind.
you don't do motion to do nothing. Okay, so where were we?
Ordinance of the town.
Thank you.
71590, amending the town schedule.
Thank you very much. Amending
you
the
just-
town
yeah.
schedule of fines, penalties, and administrative fees, and amending Chapter 18, building regulations of the municipal code of the town of Basalt regarding the energy review fee. Susan?
Okay, and this one we do want action, it's a first reading.
I can see that because nobody's saying, never mind this.
No, and, you know, a number of years ago, we took the code and it had fees and fines, and all kinds of duplicate amounts all through the code, and we took it out and put it as a separate ordinance for almost everything. And the last time we adopted that as a fee schedule, we've amended it as an entire fee schedule. The last time we kind of comprehensively packaged them all together was in 2013. Since that time, we've taken a lot of amendments to the fee schedule by way of example on marijuana and stuff, and amended the code. So what we're doing here is just a bunch of cleanups. We have on our work program to do a more substantial review in 2020. This is just cleanup items, and I'm just gonna highlight some of them that we did by department a little bit. Administration, we're updating the cemetery fees, really encouraging the cemetery to be used as a local resource. So we up the fee for non-resident folks that are not in the two zip codes, the 81621 or the 81642, and then the town manager does have the ability to review certain, specific circumstances to do that. We also added, this is just a minor thing, but occasionally we have real estate transfer assessments, and someone's doing some estate planning, and it doesn't trigger that they have to pay the fee, but they have to have an exemption. We get Jeff involved, so we wanted to address that fee. In the police department, state law was changed to allow an increase in the VIN number or the vehicle identification number. So we upped that fee to $75, and then we kind of clarified that we're really doing VIN inspections for town residents, certified, thank you, the certified VIN inspections for Basalt residents, and if you're a business that actually needs to have one done, like if you're a towing company. Planning department had, most of this was just cleanup amendment, just kind of cleaning up that administrative fees. We do a lot of administrative reviews that you guys don't see, and just kind of clarifying that costs are being passed on to the applicant. We also amended and added fees for wireless facilities, and they have limits pursuant to the Federal Communication Commission, so we added that to the code. In the building department, a number of years ago, before, when we first adopted some energy code into the building code, we added an energy review fee, and it was 10% of the building permit fee, but we had a $400 cap, which that kind of means that, you know, Willits Town Center building can pay the same as a small coffee shop type of thing. So Christy, Rick, and myself ran some of the costs on the energy review fee to determine what would be the appropriate cap on that. So it worked out that a good number would be keep the 10%, raise the cap from $400 to $2,000, and then there's language that if we're hiring special consultants, that we could pass those fees on to the applicant. And an example where that would happen might be like the Stedman Clinic, that we might have to hire some additional experts to help our review. So there's a lot of other little things. You'll see the short-term rental license might throw you that we were crossing it off somewhere. We were just reorganizing where it was because it was under grading, or it looked like it was under grading. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to
Questions?
answer.
Questions? Motions?
I had a question, not so much about our fees, but when we were commissioning or whatever, opening the facility down at Willits Bend, this is Diego Candano's place, Toy Cellar. He had a horrible awakening when he went to pay his water hookup fee to the Mid-Valley Metro. Is there any way that we can encourage them to reduce their fees, to prorate whatever that costing function is? Because it discourages the construction of affordable housing. It's $8,000 per 4-bedroom house or 5,000 square foot house. Diego was building 600 to 700 square foot, basically studios or mezzanine type structures, and he was paying $8,000 per unit, which the units were only selling for a couple $100,000, which meant that gets passed on to the consumer. And if you're going to increase costs by somewhere between 4 to 8%, that's a lot. And so, is there any way that we can influence them? Just inquire about this?
You know, I would suggest that the town look at its fees for water itself, and then if we feel we're a model, you know, maybe, you know, we revisit that with them. It is, you know, you're catching on, like, really it's not like an ADU. You're paying water and sewer tap fees, and in the past, there's been a bigger obstacle, quite honestly, that I think, than the zoning of, you know, walking in the door with a substantial fee that you're paying like that you're not gonna recoup for a while.
Right.
Well, I would say too, in our water fee schedule, we have a graduated schedule where it does depend on the size of the unit, I believe it is, or the number of bedrooms. So
Yeah.
it is a little.
I am aware that this is actually a problem for us as well, within the non-Mid-Valley Metro District, for the rest of Basalt as well, in the construction of ADUs, which if we want to encourage, we need to make them.
I actually think our fees are much less for an ADU than it would be for a single family home. So we've dealt with that.
They're still pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
The
it's
water
also, you guys have to remember that the entire water fund is not subsidized with taxes. So that same employee has to go out, and it takes the same amount of time to make sure that it's, you know, inspected correctly and it's dealt with and it's reviewed. And so, you know, those fees are really meant to capture and be reflective of the time spent. And so I think if you look, our water fees are actually pretty darn cheap compared to water fees that you're going to see in other jurisdictions, and I think they've been pretty well truth tested. I wouldn't recommend that we lower our water fees. We have a lot of unmet maintenance needs in our water fund, and those cannot be paid for with taxes. It's completely fee-based, and so that's a system investment, essentially, what you're getting there. So when somebody comes on, they have the privilege of hooking on to the water system that was built by others, and, you know,
Yeah,
at
kinda
great
get it.
expense. So I think that's,
Okay.
and we've had reviews done empirically of our water system, and you know, those fees have been recommended.
Okay, but I also note that on the 2020 work plan, we were gonna do kind of a full-blown review of all of our fees, costs, licenses, permits, and all that kind of stuff. So that's still coming, yeah?
We're gonna, what the council asked to do, one of the things, we're gonna look at our fees, probably do a more comprehensive fee, and then just do, kind of list out all of the other, fees or expenses or things like that, that people might pay, when doing development or, you know,
Right.
whatever, just so you guys can get a full snapshot of what's there. It's not realistic for staff to go through and completely overhaul every single thing, but at least gives you guys the ability to look at it and say, we like this, we don't like
Yeah.
it, or, you know, that kind of thing.
Cutting
So-
bureaucracy and red tape.
Done? Okay, I guess we're just waiting for a motion.
Mayor, I move the town council approve ordinance number 27, series of 2019 on first reading and set public hearing and second reading for December 10th, 2019.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great, thank you. Resolution 42, resolution of the town continuing the temporary suspension of collection of the town's tax on the sale of cigarettes and other tobacco and nicotine products. Jeff and Christie,
Want me to take it? Sure.
or Christie and Jeff, whichever you.
So, as you might recall, on the cigarette tax under Tabor, when there is a new tax, there has to be a first-year estimate as to the revenues that will be received as a result from that tax. The estimated first-year revenues from the tobacco tax was quite low. To avoid an over-collection of revenues, the town suspended the collection of the tobacco tax through the end of this year. We were able to do a review to kind of see how much revenue we actually collected compared to that first year estimate. We're still in excess of that. So as a way of rendering that refund, we would continue to suspend the collection of the tobacco tax for the first 2 months of 2020. And that would allow for that refund to be effectuated, and then the tax would go back into full effect. And so this is just a continuation of the suspension of the tobacco tax for 2 months.
Until it like zeroes out or.
Right.
Okay. Questions?
So that would put it back in at March, then?
Right.
March 2020.
Yep.
And from there, we can go
Jim?
full bore.
Yep, and retain all revenue.
What's the experience of the retailers? Is this confusing to them? Has there been any feedback, or?
We've talked to the retailers, to one in particular who's been vocal about it, and they were nimble enough to be able to deal with it, and I did not ask the question whether they're still collecting the same amount. A pack of
that's what my
cigarettes may
question is,
still be,
what
but
do they
that's
do
not illegal. They're not, as long as they're not couching it as a tax.
Sure.
I would, then it's just, that's the cost of their pack of smokes. And then,
Okay, that answers my question.
but I don't know that for a fact.
Sure.
I just,
Yeah.
you know,
I don't either.
I
don't
kind of
take
figured that's
cigarettes,
maybe
but-
where you were going with it.
Yeah. And we
No,
put out a
but
lot of information to them and, you know, mailers and stuff like that, so everybody was well aware that this was, and we'll do the same thing again, so everybody adjusted very well.
Great, so then I move that the town
Oh.
council,
I had raised a question with both Ryan and Christie earlier. The 2-month continuous or extension is for the purpose of absorbing the excess collection amounting to like $34,000. And the question is, if we would collect under other circumstances about $30,000 per month, effectively, we're leaving $30,000 on the table. So the question is, are we acting in the best interest of our taxpayer by extending for 2 months when in fact we really only need 1 month before we could otherwise begin to collect taxes? Now, Jeff, I guess, Christie, we kind of agreed that we would punt to Jeff on this.
Sure. I mean, I think it was based on a limited amount of data that, you know, there was, based on what had been received, if you're to forego for just 1 month, there might have been some balance. So the suggestion was to go for 2 months to ensure that there was not any question that that any overcollected amounts would have been balanced out, so to speak. You know, the
30,000 is a significant enough amount
Sure.
that, you know, I figured to raise the question
Yeah.
in the interest of our taxpayers. And if we conclude that we don't think that 1 month would be enough to absorb,
Yeah.
then, okay. Because as
And
Christine
re-
has
you know-
said, it doesn't make sense to extend for a month and a week. That gets silly. You'd want to have this become effective on the first of a month in order for it to be clean, proper, and
So right now, that 34,000 and change is a liability on our books.
Right.
And so let's just say the first month is a bad month and you collect 25,000, you're
Right.
gonna always have that liability on your books. It's, you know, so that's the risk you take, and we don't wanna do, like extending it by 1 week would be potentially confusing to,
for sure.
you know, to our vendors, so we wanna make sure it's on a month end. So was some of the,
Yeah, no, I
you
get
know,
that.
the challenges we faced with that piece.
Want to try that again, Jen?
Sure, I'd like to thank Bernie for his legacy on this, and I move that the town council adopt resolution number 42, series of 2019.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Awesome. We are hereby adjourned.
Way to bring it back in the last 20 minutes, Jackie.
Yep. Never one for excess conversation or discussion, that's for sure.
Water handler. So we're starting to experience it in our house.
So that would probably most likely be your own.
I figured you wanted me to handle it.